Restored Republic via GCR, update as of November 23, 2024. The latest video will be shown earlier at the official website. Judy note, help save tortured Caitlin and let her go home. As of Saturday 23rd of November, 2024, it's been 17 days since tortured Ohio foster child almost 17-year-old Caitlin Hunter was taken in the middle of the night Friday to Saturday, November 6, 2024 from the Dayton Children's Hospital by Ohio Child Protective Services. She was supposed to be in the hospital for overnight observation for a brain concussion from a beating 4 days prior that she had yet to receive treatment for. Alleged child trafficker Ohio CPS abducts critically ill teen from hospital. Caitlin is to be a prime witness for a child sex trafficking case against the state of Ohio Child Protective Services, the very people who abducted her from the hospital, who appeared to have neglected her critical medical needs and who now appeared to be holding her hostage with no means to call for help from her sole support person, her mother Janine Jarrett. What we know, after 2 weeks of myself and many other readers of this update making calls and emails with pleas to investigate practices of Ohio Protective Services, obtain badly needed medical care for Caitlin, plus save her from more abuse. No Ohio government agency from the Governor and Attorney General on down has acknowledged our requests, open an investigation, let alone put any effort at all into saving Caitlin. It's absolutely disgusting. If you have any information on Caitlin's situation, or on abuse of children and youth in the Ohio foster care system, please email Judy Byington at info22faces@yahoo.com. Caitlin is suffering untreated head trauma, continuous pressure on her brain, pain and needle feelings in her skull, has a brain fluid leak, 2 nuts on her skull, has trouble pronouncing, can't spell and slurs words, is highly agitated and her left eye has turned brown. For the past several years she has suffered dissociation as a result of past trauma such as being starved for a year where she lost 60 pounds and denied prescribed nutrition to regain her health. Eyes have been dilating for the past few years as a result of past beatings. She was in need of an eye operation from a prior beating months ago. She has been without her clothes, schooling and glasses since last September. She has been raped and abused throughout her 6-year stay in Ohio foster care and has tried to commit suicide several times. Alert! 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 God's children are not for sale. Rescuing Ohio's foster children from international trafficking. All the while she has been denied contact, or had very little contact, with her one support person, her mother Janine Jarrett. This is a clear case of 6 years of brutal abuse on a child who has a loving home to go to and no reason to be in foster care in the first place. Below is a Saturday 9th of November, 2024 affidavit signed by Caitlin that she attempted to file in court, but was refused. I, Caitlin Marie Hunter, swear under pains and penalties of perjury that the following is true. I, Caitlin Marie Hunter, am 16 years old, born on December 12, 2007. I have been in foster care for almost 6 years and I have fallen through the cracks of the foster care system. My brother and I were taken into Guernsey County custody February 11 of 2019 on charges that were later acquitted on September 16, 2022, in which custody should have been returned to my mother Janine Jarrett based on the fact that she never abused or neglected me or my brother. Though my life wasn't that of a movie star, I was taken care of by my mother. She wasn't perfect, but she tried and to this day tries for me. Since then, I have lived all over Ohio in several foster homes, residentials, respites and kinships. My mental, physical health and needs being neglected in the situations my county knowingly left me in. I was abused physically and mentally, starved, taunted, and pushed to the point of attempting taking my life not once but multiple times by the pain and suffering I have endured and continue to endure in state custody. Some of the unaddressed medical neglect includes my pinky finger permanently unable to fully bend due to foster parents not following up with doctor's appointments and it then later being too late for surgery to reattach the tendon. Me losing my old orthodontist because nobody took me to my appointments and my insurance money being stolen by said orthodontist which caused my bottom braces unable to be put on and treatment to be paused at my new orthodontist for now over a year. Elevated liver enzymes found when I was younger which turned out to be fatty liver that went unaddressed and not brought up by doctors for over 2 years, and documented malnourishment. Janine Jarrett. I lost over 60 pounds in less than a year and I still am having fainting spells from this. I was supposed to be drinking Ensure daily and taking meds to make my appetite bigger but I haven't had access to Ensure so I haven't been doing so. When I was being starved at Kirsten Pride's, I had to support my foster nephews, foster sisters and my needs, spending over $7,000 of mine and my parents' money buying things that my foster parents were paid to take care of. The only time I ever really interacted with Kirsten was when she woke me up for school or picked me up. When I was 12, I lived in Coshocton with Brittany Stripe where I was not properly fed, so me and my foster sister were sneaking out and stealing food from gas stations and Walmart right before COVID shut down everything. Brittany moved houses without us and eventually the private agency Journey Home caught on once they saw bruises on me at a pool day, due to the older kids beating me up. I was physically abused at Sandra Pips and told to kill and cut myself. I started to self-harm living there. The placement that caused me the most psychological and physical damage was Fox Run. There was not a day that went by without something going down. I ended up with a black eye on my second day there and watched a girl turn blue in the face while staff just watched and waited to cut the towel off of her neck. I was constantly in fights or being jumped. Staff didn't do much to help and would provoke fights between youth, and it was said they would re-watch the fights on tapes and laugh. I was there for 6 months without anyone coming to check on me even though I would report what was going on. Throughout all of this my mother has been fighting for and supporting me every step of the way. She has been the only consistent person in my life and one of the only few people that has fought for my needs. I have been to 18 separate places in total, including the group home in which currently live as of November 9, 2024. I was placed back into custody after a kinship placement decided they didn't want me anymore, in which I had to go to a group home because no foster home was willing to accept me as a placement. There are 4 other girls who are placed here as well, 2 of which are enrolled in online school, one not being forced to work on her schooling and the other unable to because her computer hasn't been working for over 2 weeks. Staff is aware and has not made any efforts to get the youth back on track. Me and the other youth are not enrolled, but the other youth has been here for close to a month and a half. I have not consistently been doing schooling since September and I am still not enrolled. They lost my transcripts from freshman year because of how often I have been moved, so now I am required to complete those credits again. The area in which they placed me is a high child trafficking area, and if I go to public school I will be required to catch the city bus. Throughout my time in county care, I have endured trauma that requires major psychological therapy in which I have not been able to fully access. This trauma makes it extremely hard to trust anybody at all, leaving me to mostly stick to myself and always leaves me on edge with anybody I'm around. This is a mental battle within itself because it leaves me very lonely, but I prefer to keep my guard up than allow someone to try to hurt me. Within these past 5 years I have been subjected to abuse and neglect by the hands of those who are supposed to protect me. On Wednesday, the 6th, I was assaulted by another youth at the group home I live in. Me and said youth had fought a day prior in which staff had told us to finish whatever we still had on our chest when we returned home. Instead, I had gone upstairs and gave the staff all the youth's contraband. But instead I was instructed to keep quiet about her having the alcohol and Benadryl because she had stolen it while we were outdoor dashing and grocery shopping with staff. Staff were aware they would be getting in trouble for her having it to begin with. It is remarkably easy to gain access to such things here because some staff leave us completely unsupervised. When the youth was tripping off the Benadryl, staff had thought she had picked up someone's laced blunt in the parking lot off staff's apartment complex, and I was instructed to babysit her and make sure she got into the shower. But instead, said youth decided to run around naked, trying to sit and lay down on my bed for close to almost an hour, dismissing any attempts to get her dressed or back in the shower. I eventually had to make the night shift staff yell at her to get dressed. I told Mrs. Dion about the contraband anyway because that same staff had sat on the porch and tried to provoke another fight between me and the youth. I overheard this and called the police fearing for my safety, but when the police officers arrived, they didn't believe me because staff had said it wasn't true. They left and less than an hour later the youth was trying to provoke another fight with me. The youth started yelling and provoking another child, making said child cry, thinking they were siding and talking bad about her with me. But then apologized whenever she realized the youth wasn't. Everything had eventually calmed down because it was time for everyone to go to sleep and the night shift had arrived. The next day, I had gotten lectured for calling the police because it caused the group home to be billed a $300 fine. According to Mrs. Dion, the fight and drama was dropped, but after dropping Mrs. Dion at her house, we went outdoor dashing with staff, then we went to the library around 5 p.m. We went back to the house after it had closed at 6 because me and another youth were hungry. When we got home, Nivea Vaughn got out of the car with her hoodie on and tied. She started yelling at me, trying to provoke me, and I yelled back but didn't hit her. I went up to the front door and was waiting for the staff to unlock it so I could go inside when she started to attack me. Before I knew it, I was on the ground slamming my head and body into the cement porch. When I hit the ground, I saw stars and heard a ringing noise. She climbed on top of me and sat on my chest while hitting me and choking me. The staff watched without any attempt to help me and was on FaceTime with Mrs. Dion saying, "Look at this," instead of trying to call the police. Another youth, Keisha Gibson, called the police, and that same youth was instructed to go inside when they arrived, refusing to let her talk to the police about what had happened. The staff that night was the same staff who was trying to provoke another fight between me and said youth from the night prior. It took a while for an ambulance to be dispatched. The police were the first ones on the scene, and when they got there, they spoke to staff first, then they spoke to me as well, but didn't do anything for me to be able to press charges even though I had stated I wanted to. When the EMTs arrived, they examined me and went inside the house to examine the other youth as well, but cleared her because she didn't have any injuries and took me to Dayton's Children's Hospital. At the hospital, they asked me questions about what had happened and about my current mental well-being. They looked over my injuries but didn't do any testing besides a urine sample. Before the hospital took my phone, saying it was in their policy to do so, I called my mother because I was scared and didn't know what to do. My mother called the nurse to inform him that I had prior head trauma and would need a CT scan, but they didn't bother to do one, even though I had a knot the size of a baseball on my head that I could cup my hand around. After my head was slammed into the cement and when she got off me, I could not hold my head up or upper body up because it was extremely heavy. I could not stand for around 2 to 3 minutes. I had a raging headache after the fact, and when I went to the hospital, I was extremely tired. I was told I could go to sleep, but I knew better than to do so considering they didn't check the extent of my injuries and just glanced over them, giving me a painkiller similar to Advil but the name I cannot remember. Since then, I have had extreme headaches and pressure in my eyes worse than I have ever experienced before. When I experience these headaches, I also experience a dissociative state. I sat in the hospital from around 6 p.m. to almost 2 a.m. The next day being monitored not for my head but because they were concerned about my mental health. While being at the hospital, the nurses had me under the impression that the group home was filing charges on me and that I would be going to JDC that night. And any time I expressed to the nurses or behavioral health specialists that I wanted to press charges on the youth for assaulting me, they told me they couldn't aid me at all with that because they were not qualified to do so. Not too long after I was informed I wouldn't be going to JDC, Mrs. Naomi, a staff member from the group home, came to pick me up. Once I returned to the group home, I went to sleep. The next day everything was mostly calm, but it hurt to move. Even the slightest movement of my neck or right arm caused excruciating pain. My body felt heavy, and my head was raging with pain and extremely sensitive to the point I couldn't lay my head down in certain ways or brush my hair, and my thumb is still numb from the first fight 4 days ago in which she tried to bite it off. The youth was not punished in any way, and still has access to social media where she was posting pictures of me and is at this point harassing me by waltzing into my room or purposely invading my space. Staff were and are aware and letting her do so. Today when I woke up, my left eye was a different color than my eyes usually are, which is a sign of head trauma. Along with that, my eyes have been dilating consistently for the past few years unaddressed, which is why my mother was concerned about the possibility of prior unaddressed head trauma. Child Protection Services have done anything but protect me. I, Caitlin Marie Hunter, wish to return back home to my mother where my needs will be met and I will be safe. Patriots, let's band together and set Caitlin free. Please pray for her and consider contributing to the Caitlin Hunter Wants to Go Home GoFundMe account. The money will be used to reunite her with her family after 6 long years of abuse, starvation, rape and torture while in the Ohio foster care system. In other news, done in 30, Happy Thanksgiving. If no return is filed, the Internal Revenue Service cannot assess you. Gary Makovsky, IRS agent, testifying under oath in U.S. v. Lloyd. Friday,